It's a very cohesive community. I think it's pretty tight-knit. And I think it's critical at some point that we got our own building and got our own space. If you're a synagogue in a say, a city, there might be 6, 7 different synagogues, someone for more liberal, more conservative, all such political, non-social action, whatever. We have to appeal to all people, and that to me has been the biggest strength of the synagogue, is that we are really a big tent of really diverse Jewish people with, and people that come here for different reasons. But 1966, Arthur Cohen brought it to the board to build a synagogue. And it was voted in by a vote of 15 to 12 for that to happen. When you look at the key members of the synagogue, at least I've been a member for 30 years, and the members I think of in particular are Doc Cohen, Arthur Cohen. He was the president for 16 years. It was his vision that created this original building. It was also his vision that enabled us to get a Jewish cemetery in Keene in 1972. This building was built in 1973.
When I got here with my wife and kids in 1961, August, we were the 25th member of the Jewish congregation. I became co-president in 63, and then president in 64, thereabouts. And I said, you know, we really need a new building. Got to find a new building? I'll build one. The vice president, Eddie Kapeloff, was all for it. Bernie Wilder, who passed away last summer, he was all for it. It was a close vote, 15 to 12, but we did it.
Originally, we were on at 45 Main Street. We know where Fritz's is? That was the first synagogue. Then to Winter Street, and then after the war to 91 Court Street. But 1966, Arthur Cohen brought it to the board to build a synagogue. And it was voted in by a vote of 15 to 12 for that to happen. I mean, when this whole thing started, say in 66, we probably had 25 members. Now we have almost 100. When I say members, I mean family units. So if it's, you know, a husband, wife, and kids, that would be one member. Aaron was a 3-time mayor of Keene, maybe you know that. And so I think, you know, he really wanted to have this exhibit, and the synagogue, you know, we brought it to the board, and I said, yeah. I mean, the board was a 15-member board, which I'm the president of. We all thought it was a great idea, and I think it will introduce some people in the Monadnock area to the Jewish community a little more than they are now. But I think a lot of people in New Hampshire and Keene, even in Keene State, they kind of view Jews from the perspective of the Holocaust. So I think the exhibit is great in that it points out the rich history of Jewish people in the area not connected to the Holocaust. So it gives a different perspective, just regular people, merchants, business people. We know that we had Jewish business people here, as you saw in the exhibit, going back to at least 1887. We've had a synagogue here since 1916. It's a pretty rich history, and I think it gives people of the Monadnock area a broader view of Jews.
I personally have not met with any anti-Semitism. I'm sure there's some here and there. There'll always be. But I never came across it. When I went to school in Lowell, it was everywhere. Very, very much so. But this community is a different community. We get along with just about everybody.
Well, the idea for the exhibit came from my family. The synagogue in Keene was celebrating its 100th anniversary of the charter in the charter in 1916, and the 100th anniversary was in 2016. And we wanted to remember and honor the founders of the synagogue. They were people who were largely forgotten. In our general research on Jewish immigrants that came to this country, we found that most of them went to the large cities. A small percentage of them came to small towns across North America, like Keene. We found there was a general theme that they came and first were peddlers and junk dealers. Then they saved capital and became shopkeepers. And what we found is that the original Jewish immigrants to Keene were in fact either peddlers or junk dealers. In 1920 and 1930, the original languages were published in the census, or compiled in the census, and so we found the Yiddish-speaking people. We found that they contributed locally, they contributed statewide, and they contributed nationally. We found that a graduate of Keene High School in 1936, who was the grandson of one of the original founders of the community. His name was Ralph Livingston. He went on to become an atomic scientist, and he worked on the Manhattan Project, the project that developed the bomb during World War II. We found a graduate of Keene High School in 1936, who was the grandson of one of the original founders of the community. His name was Ralph Livingston. He went on to become an atomic scientist, and he worked on the Manhattan Project, the project that developed the bomb during World War II. We found another person who graduated from Keene High School in 1922, and he went to Dartmouth and then graduated from Harvard Law School and became a assistant New York State Attorney General and was a member of a prominent law firm there. His name was Maurice Quint. He became a lieutenant in the Navy during World War II in the Intelligence Division, and he was on the battleship, the Bunker Hill. So we found people from this immigrant group that went on to achieve national achievements. We also found locally, we knew about him, Harry Litchman, who became a judge, and his brother Jacob Litchman, who became the historian for the Continental Air Command. All of the original founders, their families and their descendants moved out of Keene. So the present Jewish community has no connection with the original Jewish community that founded the community.